Why do I get giggly at this point? Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Remind podcast. I'm Dr. Ashleigh Moreland. I am joined by my co-host David Masterton. Today we are discussing an important topic of the feeling and sensation of, but I have no choice. This is super suffocating, super disempowering. So as we chat about this, Dave, I have no choice. Wowza, where to even start? It really is a mindset. It really is a mentality and agreement, isn't it?
Well, welcome from sunny, cold Hobart today. Hence why, for those watching the video, you'll see I have beanie and my grandpa cardigan on, but feeling warmer. But from the top of the show, I'm going to say unpopular opinion, you always have a choice. Always. The difference I found for myself is how hard is a consequence of that choice. And it's sort of like, if I look at some of the hardest choices, I think for me it feels a bit unfair that I have to make a choice like that, or I have to deal with the consequences of it. And I've spoken to other people about it as well. And so when they've said I had no choice, was physically they had a choice. But when they say
we always have a choice, right?
Yeah.
That's like a literal universal truth. It's a reality check. We always have choice, even if they're tough, even if they come with consequences, even if they hurt, even if it feels like there's no win, there's still a choice.
And that's the hardest thing. But it's like, what does that choice represent? So I feel that when you say you don't have a choice, what you're choosing is weighing up the risks of staying where you are versus weighing up the risks of following through with the opposite of whatever you're going through, the so-called no choice. But there really are two things. So, and they just weigh it up and go, actually, the pain, the hurt, the terror, everything I'm going to go through if I proceed in this other direction is so paralyzing that I have no choice.
Yeah.
And it's a gut-wrenching place to be. But it doesn't actually...
I could feel my body rigid, like it is, and it's so tangible. And I don't know a single human who's never been in that position where they've felt trapped or they've felt stuck or they've felt like there's no right. There's literally, it's all the options are going to suck. And they really do. And making a choice when every option sucks is hard. Or making a choice when every option results in someone getting hurt or letting someone down. Yeah, it's hard.
And I think I said before, it's sort of like the only reason why people don't do it is because going through it would be so paralyzing. I am forgetting to mention one thing. It's those people who feel trapped because they feel as though they have to stay the course because of they're doing it for somebody else. They don't want to put their interests above the other person.
So important, isn't it? And it's doing it for someone else. Doing it for someone else, or to avoid, what is it? Doing it for someone else, literally processing out loud, or to avoid because they don't feel worthy of it themselves, of choosing themselves. And I guess there's this whole sense of self conversation to be had around this. And that's what I tend to find is that, even at a physical level, I recently had a conversation with someone who their body had rejected breast implants multiple times. And when we got into the energetics of that and we got into what was really beneath that, it was a recognition that her true essence didn't want them, or didn't want the type or the size or whatever it was, whatever the context was, but she was doing that for others, to keep
Wow.
others happy, or
Okay.
to avoid judgment or rejection or whatever it might have been. And even in that, when you sit with that, like, to feel like I have no choice but to do this thing, or to, yeah, it's so big. Oh my gosh, I
Well,
can
it's
feel
huge.
the
Well,
weight of this.
and I've heard this on a few occasions, and this is typically from mothers who, when they look back at relationships, or some people that are going through it now, I will stay in a relationship with the father of their children for the children,
Yeah.
not for themselves, but for the children. So they're doing
Yep.
the right thing based on the child. And you
Yep.
mentioned before about, is it like a self-awareness or something like that? Well, I guess at that point, it really depends on your awareness. Is your awareness on the fact that, okay, I am doing this because I'm putting, if I in this case, mother staying in a relationship for the children, because if I leave that, then it's going to be detrimental to the child. So I'd rather take care of the child than worry about my own needs as a choice, versus I'm actually not aware of all these other woundings that are bubbling up at the basement of all of this. And actually,
Yes.
the only thing I can comprehend is the child. However, there's a whole lot of other things that need me to be here, which is not necessarily for the child, but I'm not aware of them.
Yeah.
It's a
I
sense
was a
of,
product of that.
wow, okay,
That was exactly my experience, and it was late in my, I don't want to say late in my adult life, because I'm young. I've still got
super
plenty
young.
of adult life still to
Yeah,
come.
yeah.
But I mean, it was quite late in my initial healing journey, because I grew up in a very, like, dysfunctional household. My father was an alcoholic. My mum stayed for the kids. That was her. She felt very disempowered. She felt like she had no choice. And I don't fully know what's behind that, whether it was she felt like she had no financial choice, or she felt like she had no choice but to keep the family together and not get divorced because of other programming or whatever. I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of that. But ultimately, the energy was, I have no choice. And so remaining in a dysfunctional, unhealthy relationship because of not being willing to see another choice, or not being willing to execute on that other choice, but actually, in my mum's mind, she was making that choice for us. But by doing so, her choice to stay meant that my brother and I were still exposed to my dad's alcoholism and a dysfunctional relationship and a home where two people were deeply unhappy, and violence and aggression and all those kinds of things. Whereas if my mum had have made a different choice, we might have, I don't know, like, our living circumstance might have changed. We might have, things might have been different. But by her making a different choice, we would not have been exposed to that trauma. Like, we wouldn't have gone through what we went through to the extent that we did. And looking, like, I've really explored, because then obviously I replicated that and ended
Right.
up in a dysfunctional relationship with the father of my children, and had to navigate those same feelings of feeling like, well, I don't have a choice because we're married and I made the choice to get married, and now I've got to live with it. And now we've got kids, so I can't leave now. And I lived that. And the dance for me became, well, is it really true that I don't have a choice? Or is it just that, for me, the things that suffocated the choice was fear of being alone.
It's a big one.
I I didn't have a fear of not being able to do it on my own. I knew that I was fine. I'd basically been a solo parent for the prior 4 years. So being a solo parent was not the barrier for me. Money was not the barrier for me. I knew that I could afford to live on my own. There was no other real barrier apart from a deep, suffocating fear of being alone or fear of being rejected or abandoned. And so that fear felt like I have no choice but to stay in this relationship, because what if no one else will have me?
Well, I suppose it's better the
And
devil you know, isn't it? At that point.
well, isn't it? How
Yeah.
easy does that roll off the tongue? Better the devil you
Oh,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it? And that was bypassing, because in order to not feel or experience the intense fear of being alone or not being wanted by anyone else or being rejected or abandoned, I remained in the unhealthy relationship. We were together at that point for 8 years, and I chose to remain in that unhealthy relationship. And I think probably one of the hardest truths that I had to come to grips with when I was processing, like I said, with the realization that even though my father was the overtly aggressive person and alcoholism and all that sort of stuff, my mum was my abuser by keeping me there. That was like
Okay.
mind exploding for me. So for me, when I looked at, it was one thing for my then husband to have hurt me in all the ways, but who really hurt me? Who really was my abuser? And it was me, because I chose to stay for 8 years. If I stayed for 8 weeks, he would have hurt me for 8 weeks, and I would have made a different choice to go and be alone, to not tolerate that being hurt. But the fear of being alone was bigger than the discomfort of the hurt of the relationship. So it had to reach a tipping point where the discomfort and the fear and the experience of the relationship was worse than the possibility of being alone. And it was that tipping point that actually got it over the line and resolved the relationship.
And you're
Allowed
like,
me to
okay,
see the choice
I'm
that I didn't want to see.
yeah, beautiful. You're now allowed to see the
Yeah.
choice. Because I think, I mean,
Yeah.
for myself, bypassing, especially when it comes to these type of things, I see it as I want to say negative. I want to say it's sort of like a cheat's way of doing it. But it's the further along I come along in this journey, it's not necessarily that energy. For me, this bypassing could also be that word can be interchanged with the level of awareness. Because if we go back, just when it comes to staying in relationships or divorce rates, let's go back to our parents' parents. Now, we're only talking about two generations. And for someone like myself, who's a young, sprightly 45, my parents are no longer with us. However, divorce rates back then, nowhere near where it is now. Is that a symptom of the fact that marriages were just happier back then, or the fact that society sort of shunned?
Culturally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the fact that there was no financial support. Like there's none of there wasn't the amount of support available now. Then, so those parents or those couples had children, which are our parents. And what was it that was sort of fed into their psyche? Well, you get married, single income, you raise kids, three bedroom, house, picket fence, all of those things.
Yeah.
And you kind of you got to work on the marriage. So it wasn't really talked about as much, having divorces, especially when they were younger, in their informative years. So when you've got then having kids, I'm seeing divorce rates, or I've seen with the stats, divorce rates getting higher. But like for your parents and my parents, it started to happen later in the kid's life. And now in this generation, you're seeing divorce rates get a whole lot earlier in kids' life. So hopefully from our kids downwards, it's sort of like, don't chase marriage, chase a relationship. Doesn't mean not get married.
Yes.
But it's what has been modelled. So the difference here, I'm sort of seeing there's been choices all along the way. However, the awareness and the ability for us to expand our awareness has been growing. Therefore, the choice
How cool is that?
is becoming a whole lot more apparent quicker. The choice was always there.
Yep.
And so the people that are feeling as though they don't have a choice, they're right. They feel like they don't have a choice. So therefore,
Yep.
it's probably the awareness that will come in time or not, free will, but it's what they feel. And so
Yeah.
it's just like you look at the whole societal change and what we're trying to do a 180 on as a society, it's massive. And I remember, separating, and it was never easy. But it's sort of like, and at the start, I remember feeling like I have no choice. And I'll give you 3 really great reasons why I don't have a choice. However, out of those 3 great reasons, there was a light and a dark side. And I was looking at the dark side.
Yeah.
I can't because of this. I can't because of that. I can't because of that. Well, for every can't, there's a can. You can't say can't without can.
Yeah.
So there's that. Oh, it's another one I like. I'm pretty sure someone else must have come up with that before. But yeah, you can't spell can't without can. So
Yeah.
think of it that way.
It's the goggles again, isn't it? It's the goggles again, where when we are in our state of pain body, when we're in our Harry state, our state of pain body and ego, and just wanting to avoid discomfort and avoid pain and seek pleasure, and it's all based on fleshly desires and human instinct and human survival, we can only see the threats. We can only see why we can't make a choice or why it's impossible. Whereas there's so many solutions, there's infinite solutions in the universe, and our ego can't see them because it's so fixated on survival. It's like if survival is to my right, but the solution is to my left, I feel like my Harry, my ego, my nervous system feels like I cannot take my eyes off survival to see the solution because I might die. And I think that's a really powerful revelation because, quite often when I look at this, when like I've been in an unfulfilling job feeling like I didn't have a choice. I've been in, a toxic relationships feeling like I didn't have a choice. I have avoided difficult conversations or not set boundaries because I felt like I didn't have a choice. When someone's needing something from me and needing something from me and needing something from me and needing something from me, and I would give and give and give and give and give and give and give because I felt like I didn't have a choice, when actually I was bypassing the fact that if I did have a choice, how would that be uncomfortable for me? What would be required of me in order to have that choice? Who would have to get hurt in order for me to make that choice? What conversations would need to be had in order for me to execute that choice? And as soon as I realized that actually it's my desire to please people instead of hurt people, it's my desire to, I can't remember the other things that I said, not feel discomfort in order to not make the choice, well then actually like I start to have a revelation as to it's self-preservation. So it's that survival fixated nervous system, and that's around like when people are stuck in that chronic fight, flight, freeze, especially then their nervous system is so overwhelmed with chronic stress that when we're in that chronic stress response, we are not in a state to be able to see or access the revelations of truth that exist already within us, the solutions to those problems. And it's so interesting because even in my own world recently, anyone playing along at home, Remind Institute, all the tech crashed. I had to basically pull the life support plug of my web provider, and all the tech crashed. We didn't have emails for days. Our websites are down and all that sort of stuff. And when I was in the state of overwhelm, mostly because of stuff that was happening in our personal lives, I was unable to see the solutions in my business. And it was really fascinating because I went into this overwhelm and I was like, oh, but I've got to do this and I've got no choice. I've got to fix the website. I've got to rebuild from the ground up and I've got to do this and I've got to do that and this needs my attention. I've got to change this over and I was so overwhelmed and felt so just suffocated. And then as soon as I had a closure of something in my personal life, it was almost like the fog lifted and all of a sudden I could see these really basic solutions like, oh, I don't need to rebuild the entire website. I just need to create a landing page that says website coming soon and redirect to it. Ah, I don't need to.
Mm.
And all these things were there, but
Mm.
those choices were not even available to me because I was so fixated on survival for that period of time because my
Mm.
cup was completely overflowing. I was so fixated on survival in that time that I did not even have access to the solutions that existed in that state of peace and like my Sally state, right?
Mm.
And it was crazy because then as soon as I was able to access those solutions, I was like, oh my gosh, the weight of the world's lifted off my shoulder. Now I can make some choices. And the discomfort of those choices is, yeah, we don't have a live website at the moment. Yeah, we don't have this at the moment. Yeah, we're not able to function in that at the moment. Yeah, I had to delay well, I didn't have to. I had a choice. I made the choice to delay the next round of Rise and Thrive until I could get my platforms
Mm.
and my systems set up to be able to support that. Um, but I definitely felt the pressure of, but I have no choice. I advertised it as this date. I have no choice. I've blah, blah, blah. It was always a choice. It just meant I had to risk disappointing some people. I had to communicate, I had to have conversations to say, hey, we're going to delay the start date by 1 week.
Mm.
So
It's
yeah,
so
there's
it's so
always choice.
relevant what you're saying there. It's sort of like the overwhelm and not seeing the choice is not a bad thing. It's not like you're doing a
Yeah.
crap job. It's not as though you just, that you're not doing anything right. It's not sort of putting you down to sort of say that feeling as though you don't have a choice, it's real. And I guess the way you just, as you were
Mm-hmm.
talking about, I'm like, yeah, wow. I can remember times where I felt that way. And it might have been on small things or big things. And I think for anyone who's going through it, just remember it's okay to be in that space, right? It's okay to feel like you don't have a choice, but be open to the fact that there actually is a choice. And if there is a choice, what does
Yeah.
that look like? And even as I say that,
Yeah.
I want to say I could guarantee that most people daydream about the opposite. Like, I don't have a
Yeah.
choice, but they'll daydream almost like a subconscious manifesting what they want, right? And so
It's so true.
so that
Absolutely.
so that they can see it. Now, if you're like me, I'm a little bit all or nothing, on or off, running or asleep. So for me, I enjoy big movements, but I also understand, as I've become a little bit more older and wiser in the last 2-3 years, it can be baby steps. Like, you can't run a marathon in one step. It has to be
Yeah.
going along. So
And
if you
it's
can,
it's repeated steps. You can't just make
consistency.
one
Yeah.
giant step. A marathon is lots of repeated little steps. And even if you stop and pause and take a drink, you just keep going from where you left off. Even if you trip, well, you get up and you keep going from where you left off. So, and I think that's really important because
Consistency.
the all or nothing thing is something that I really struggled with, and consistency felt very threatening to me. With my little special brain that wears the label of ADHD and my shiny light syndrome and all these kinds of things,
Mm.
I I would often find myself in a marathon, get thirsty and stop for a drink and feel like because I stopped for a drink I've failed.
Or
Well,
you're being
no.
lazy.
You
Yeah.
just you just stopped for a drink. You can just keep stepping, right?
Yeah.
And that showed up everywhere in my life. It's like, oh, well, I've got no choice but to do this, or I've got no choice but to I'm just trying to think of an example like, oh, well, I've fallen off the wagon now with my healthy eating. That's like being in a marathon. It didn't take one meal to put on all this weight. It's not going to take one meal to lose it. And so consistency felt like a threatening word where it would activate my stress responses and overwhelm because I consistency meant perfection. If you're doing something consistently, it means that you don't stop. And if I ever stopped in that marathon to take a drink, if I tripped over, if anything happened, I felt like I had failed and the survival instinct would kick in, which would put me into freeze. And I would go into, well, now I can't do anything. I can't take action. I can't make a decision. I can't move forward. I can't take a step. I'm just stuck here forever and it's done.
The elastic time of the ADHD brain. It feels like time goes so quickly when you're going flat out and productive, and at a snail's pace where you can feel like you hear your heartbeat like every minute when you're stopped. I get that. But it's like you talk about, we talk about the running thing. I remember, I think I was running my first half marathon, because I've done 3. I will do a 4th one eventually. But they used to have these water stations set up. Now you can either put your own drink bottles there with your name on it and they'll scatter them out, or you could be, so they're the ones where you can squeeze on the bottle and you can sort of shoot it in your mouth. Or they'll just be these cups, just your standard old party cups, little white ones, plastic. And the first drink station, I came along and I started walking to have a drink, so I wasn't carrying. And I thought the second drink station, I'll get a little bit of extra time because I wanted just to... I've been trying to do a half marathon under 2 hours. Still not yet, but I'll get there. So I thought the next drink station, I'll just keep on running with a cup, not with a squeeze bottle or anything like that. And I tell you what, picked it up, kept on running, tried to drink it, got my face wet, nothing went in the mouth. It's so hard to actually be able to drink water while running out of a cup. And that's why you see these people doing the old squirt, because at least that way you can open your mouth, squirt. And so for me, I used to feel as though I was either winning or failing. Again, light switch, on or off. It can't be sort of succeeding and resting or succeeding and learning. It was just succeeding or failing. So that always pushed me to do better. So maybe add in some perfectionism and some self-worth around productivity. And you got a recipe there, it sounds like a bit like yourself, of I'm a product of what I do, not necessarily a product of what I am. And so
I love that. I see that a lot, and especially in mums, where there's so many people that need from us. I have absolutely fallen into this trap many times in my life. It's a constant thing that I have to check in with. But my son he's got additional needs. He's on the NDIS. He's got lots of therapies and all the things. And I sort of look at it as, well, these are my responsibilities and obligations to meet his needs as his mum, right? Is to have the consistent therapies and to book it all in and to get him all there. And like our therapy place is almost an hour away. So it's an hour drive there. We do the session, we drive home, and there's a bit of mucking around.
Like 3 hours in one thing, is it? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And then you've got the after school activities and you've got the birthday parties and you've got all the things that come. And that's only like, I've got 2 kids. I mean, I've got clients with 6 kids. I've got a client with 8 kids. So when you look at their life and you go, okay, there's a lot of people needing from you all the time. And, you know, fair enough, when they're infants, yes, we kind of do need to, their survival literally depends on us.
Yeah.
But when I look at this, I had to have a really honest conversation because I found myself falling into the trap of I've got no choice. He needs this therapy. If I don't take him to the therapy, then I'm failing him and he needs the help and I'm the weak link and I'm the, you know, the bottleneck. But all the while I'm absolutely bashing myself and belting myself and completely abusing myself emotionally and physically trying to make things work to get him to all these things and to do all the things with the kids, that was at the expense of me. It cost me. And what I realized is that actually, who loses when I lose me? They do. So I had to look at the priorities and go, okay, well, I felt like I had no choice because, well, we've got this appointment booked in. I've got no choice but to take him. The appointment's booked in. Oh, we've got this, birthday party on the weekend. I've got no choice but to take her. So when those situations came up, it was actually kind of really empowering to sit there and go, when all is well in my world and I'm in a good place and I don't have everything else earth-shattering happening around me, I can totally handle taking him to his therapies. I can handle doing the school drop-offs and the dinners and all the stuff. I can totally carry it all. But there are seasons of storms when I can't carry it all. And all those things become too much. And the energy that it takes for me to survive the storm reduces the energy that's available for me to be able to continue upholding all of those other things and commitments. And so in that equation of, well, something's got to give, it was always me. I was the one who had to give. My well-being had to give. My sleep had to give. My sense of self had to give. And that was soul destroying, literally, because I was the one beating the crap out of my soul with my story of I have no choice. And then I sat there one day and I was like, is the world going to end if my son misses some of his therapy appointments? No, it's not. Is the world going to end if the kids have rice from a microwave packet and baked beans for dinner? No, it's not. Is the world going to end if, and then just continue? Does it even really matter? Can I put this on pause? Can I take it off the schedule for a while? Can I delay this if it's too much for me? And honestly, that was such an empowering choice when all I had to do was choose me.
Powerful.
And when I chose me, my son improved, life got better. And sometimes I still fall into the trap of choosing things outside of me, but I'm a whole lot better at it. I'm a whole lot more conscious now, even when it comes to because I'm really generous with my time and I want to serve people and I'm a relationship and connector person. And when people want to connect with me, I want to connect with them. But now I've had to really check in with myself and go, what is that connection costing me? And if the answer is me, then I have to say, can we reschedule? If the answer is, it's going to cost me some of my free time, but I absolutely have the capacity, then I'm willing to spend some of my free time with that connection and relationship. But when I am the cost, when my okayness, my sense of self, my well-being, my literally energy reserves is the cost, I have to make that choice and say, I love you and I want to chat. Can we do it next time? Can we catch up next week or whatever? So that's been a bit of my journey.
Sounds like there's a bit coming up there to process.
Heaps. This is probably one of the most consistent things that I have to keep my finger on the pulse with in my life. It's probably, because I tend to be a high achiever and I tend to be able to cope with a lot on my plate, and I tend to like to be productive and busy and all that sort of stuff. And I love innovating and I love doing all the things. It's something that I have to be relentlessly conscious of, because it's very easy for me to unknowingly fall into a trap where I feel pressured and stressed and like I have no choice, when the reality is quite different. So it's like my silent assassin.
It's your silent little capacity killer.
Yeah, if I'm not really onto it. And maybe
Well,
it will
yeah.
become more automatic and maybe it will become more autonomous over time. But in full transparency, this is probably the area of my life where I go, yeah, I'm working on that,
Mm.
actively working on that.
And see, here's the thing, and I love that you sort of said that. It's sort of like, it's not like you're sort of saying, I don't have a choice because I have to do this with Remind. I have to do this with my kids. I have to. You're sort of saying, look, there's a mad area of opportunity here and I'm working towards it. I'm still a long way away from where I feel I need to be or I want to be, but I'm on the path. Like that's still
Mm,
going in that direction. It's not that sort of, and for anyone out there who's sort of going, like it might be slow going, but I'm still heading in that direction. This is not necessarily us saying that you're saying you don't have a choice. It's what we're pointing at
yeah.
is people saying, I wish I could be a better mum. I wish I could be a more successful business person. I wish I could da 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 da,
Yeah.
but I can't because of this. As opposed to I'm working on it, but it feels like a long journey, but I'm getting there. And it comes down
Yeah.
to like even having a job that you're sort of like, okay, I can't leave this job because I have no choice because I got bills. Yeah, that's a big one, and
Yeah.
especially in today's age. It's sort of like where
Isn't
a
it?
loaf a loaf of bread costs $100, right? That's what it feels like at the moment. You could have a hundred
It
thousand
does.
dollars, $100,000
Literally
salary
does.
these days feels like very basic,
It's
very
not
basic.
enough. Yeah. It's
I actually
crazy, isn't
heard
it?
that now don't quote me verbatim on this, but someone did a study in Australian dollars that sort of said what is a salary that you now need to have, a household salary now, to be able to have the same mortgage stress as what we'll say and it will be in general terms, like to buy a house in the 70s roughly. Now, again, don't hit me on the specifics. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but it was roughly to have the same mortgage stress to buy a house like in the 70s or so, you'd have to be earning household income of around $280,000 to have the same mortgage stress, simply because
Yeah.
of mortgage rates, but most importantly, house prices versus income.
House
So the
prices.
reason I'm
Yeah.
saying this is I can't because of money pressures. Holy moly, it is hard, it is tough, it is a
Yeah.
grind. But to say you don't have a choice, it's a difficult choice, but it's still a choice.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
when you look at these things and go, okay, well, what am I choosing? Well, I'm choosing the comfort of not having to worry about this bill at this time because I've got maybe just
Yeah.
enough or whatever it is. So I'm choosing that above whatever piece I'm looking for.
Mm.
And as you said before, the Harry, the ego, and I know we're going to be hitting Harrys a lot with ego. We love all of you Harrys out there. That if the ego or your pain body had absolute certainty, if you took this leap of faith, and it may be difficult, it may be a little bit of a grind, but you'd get there. If it had the certainty, it would 100% do it because it
Yeah.
knows that. But what we don't get given, I think that's part of this whole thing, and I may have mentioned it in a recent podcast in the past, we don't get given that certainty, hence why it's a leap of faith. Because we're exploring part of
Absolutely.
this free will. So it's sort of like,
Absolutely.
which
And
one are you
Harry only has what Harry can see.
for
And that
protection?
feels terrifying. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. I love that.
Aircon being
Dave's got
installed.
some nice background noise there.
Yep. Yep.
Something that is when I think about empowering myself to make choices, like if all you did was change your mindset every time you catch yourself saying, I don't have a choice, if all you did was reframe that to hypothetically, if I had choices, what would they be? That will change so much because when I look at this, I go, okay, there's two main reasons why people don't change their situation. One is that they don't know. They don't know how, they don't know what, they don't know who, where. And so, for instance, if someone felt like they had no choice but to do all the overtime, my question would be, so there is a choice. What would the choice be? Well, the choice would be, I say no. Okay, awesome. So there's one of two things here at play. One is, do you know how to do that? Slight tech issue there. So do you know how? And that is like, what do you say? Should you sit? Should you stand? Say it now, say it later. So when someone is coming to me and they've got this issue, my first question is do you know how? And if not, well, then we can practice that. We can give you the words, we can give you the language, we can give you the what, when, who, how, why. But the next thing is, if I say, if you needed to say no, do you know how? And they'll say, yes, I do. I'll ask them, show me, how would you say no? And they would show me. Then I know the barrier is fear. So the only other option, if you know exactly what to do, exactly what to say, and you're still not saying it, the only barrier then is fear. And then we get to the root of the fear. What's the fear coming up here? The fear is, I don't want to say no because I don't want to lose my opportunity for promotion. I don't want to say no because what if I disappoint them? What if they think I'm lazy? What if? And then you get your whole list of what ifs. And then you're like, all right, wow, that's really insightful. Okay. So you know what to do, but you still can't do it. There's still a barrier to you actually doing it. Well, what's the barrier? And when you can resolve that barrier, all of a sudden, the choice becomes an action. And, it's one of those things quite often I find with people is when they can know what to do and they can have eliminated the barrier to doing it. But if the action of doing it feels not worth the consequence of doing it, it still won't happen. 100%. So, for example, if I know that for me to choose me, I know exactly what I need to do. My personal barriers to doing it are completely resolved, so I'm at peace with doing it. But even if I did it, it wouldn't be worth the consequence of the impact it would have on the other person. Then the only option then is to wait time, because the universe has a way of squeezing us. Yeah. And timing is so important because the universe has a way of squeezing us. And what it will do is it will squeeze us and apply pressure and apply pressure and apply pressure. And all of this early time is not enough yet for us, for the trade-off to be worth it. And so when we know how to do it and we don't have barriers to doing it, we just need the exchange. We need the transaction to be worth it. Then we'll do it. So it's kind of like, okay, the thing that just came to my mind just then, as I said that out loud, was buying a house. I can know how to buy a house, that I need a conveyancer, that I need a mortgage, or I don't need a mortgage broker, but I might know that I want to use a mortgage broker. I might know exactly how much money I need. I might have all the knowledge and be totally empowered to know what I need to do to buy that house. I might have no fear about buying the house. I might be totally comfortable with having a mortgage and totally comfortable with choosing the house and being committed for 30 years. So there's no barrier to buying the house, and I have all the know-how. But yet the universe has to conspire to provide the right opportunity for the house. If the house that I want isn't on the market yet, well then it'll continue to move things and shift things and squeeze things until the right house comes up. So they're the three factors for me when I say to people, all right, you don't have to have the pressure of making this decision or taking this action right now. My job is to know, do you know what to do and when to do it? Yes, I do. The next thing is, are there any barriers to you doing it? No, barriers as in fears. Amazing. From there, I can wipe my hands of it and go, my job here is done. When you choose to do it, That doesn't bother me whatsoever. I've had clients contact me 2 years after working with me going, I'm just letting you know I did the thing. I'm like, awesome. They knew how to do it. Their fears were resolved, but they needed the right time. They needed, I don't know, whether it's evidence gathering, whether it's
Or
the
it's
right
sort of,
time, the right environment.
yeah, and not you don't need the fears to be gone to be able to do it. Sometimes it's like, as you said before, you just know that staying is worse than going, or, you know,
Yeah, it's a trade-off. It doesn't have
yeah,
to be gone, but it
because you
has
can
to
be
be
doing it while scared. I think
bigger. It has
that's,
to be harder to stay.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it's been such a powerful episode. We probably need to wrap this up because I can just feel there'll be a few more
Yes.
construction-like sounds coming from my place. But the also just one final takeaway is that, and this is, or maybe I'm talking to myself as well at this point, is that I'm really good at preparing myself for the doomsday side of the choice, right? I don't want to do it because it can get this bad, and because I'm so imaginative,
Yeah.
and I'm sure I'm not alone, that I can really think up some really great reasons. And for that reason, I can't, the ledger's very heavily one-sided. Imagine for a
Yeah.
moment, I could imagine the equal opposite of that. Because if I can imagine the
Yeah.
worst, then the opposite is in play. And so
Yeah.
maybe just think of that as well when you're sort of sitting there and you're sort of daydreaming about something that you want to do, and then you realise I can't do it because I've just worked out the worst possible scenario. Know that there's an equal and opposite to the upside. And
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that. That's really good. That's really good. And that there's agency. I think agency is so underrated. When you take ownership of your choices means that you recognize that you have agency over every decision that you make. And although that can be confronting in some ways, because I had to be willing to recognize that all the great stuff in my life was there because of my agency, but all of the terrible stuff in my life, all the not so great stuff in my life, was also there because of my agency. If I traced those things back through my past, I could pinpoint the moments in time, the choices I made, the decisions I made, the priorities I set, which got me there. And the beautiful thing about agency and ownership is that if all of my previous choices and decisions got me here, then my now choices and decisions can get me there. And so what are the choices and decisions that I can make now to get me to where I want to be? And again, I struggle a little bit with that, with the special brain, as in future pacing, and quite often I find that challenging to do. But it's a really, really powerful and really beneficial thing to explore, is tuning into that agency and that ownership, knowing that the choices you make today are going to have a compounding effect into your future. It's not a one-for-one relationship. It compounds like compounding interest in a bank account, day in, day out. The more you continue to come into alignment with your agency that honors you, the flow and effect of that into the future is exponential. It's not a linear relationship. So I think that's really powerful.
Awesome.
So before we finish up, Dave, I'm going to mention, guys, we have our Heart-Centered Healing Hub Facebook group. So jump into that now. We invite you to come into that. We're going to be a lot more active. We're really kicking that off now. So that is an open space for everyone to come and join, ask questions, be prompted, have self-reflection. We'll be sharing resources and join the conversation there. So we really want to be able to bring our community together now that our community is getting bigger. So we're really grateful for your shares, for sharing the podcast with other people and all that sort of stuff. And now we're excited to bring our community together in a more meaningful way and have real-time chats with you.
Link will be in the show notes, description. We'll link it in there for you.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. Just remember, subscribe button, like button, We enjoy bringing these two every week. So let us know you enjoy it by hitting those two things. Drop some comments in below or in the show notes. Let us know what you want to talk about. And until then, we'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.